We're here in downtown East Palestine. I'm joined with Lonnie, who is a business owner here in town. She also lives very close to where the derailment happened in general. Kind of taking a couple steps back here now, you mentioned to me that you were actually in your home the night of the derailment. You live on Clark Street, which is a road where many folks that we've talked with live on. The train tracks are essentially right in your backyard or right across the street from you, depending on where you live.
Pretty much my front yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the experience of that night and having that happen?
We were in our living room the night of February 3rd when the train derailed. It's a moment that's always going to stick with me for the rest of my life. It was horrific sounding, is the only way I can describe it. The metal on metal, and you could hear the initial explosion, and just the way that it rattled my home and shook my home. I knew instantly that it derailed because I've lived in my house for the last 30 years. So you get used to the way that the trains sound on a daily basis. I knew this one was different. I said to my husband, I said, that train derailed, and he was in denial, instantly in denial, and said, no. And I said, yes, that derailed. I knew. Just the way our house shook, and just the sounds that I heard. My hearing tends to be better than my husband's because he has some hearing damage from the place that he works, his job. We went out on our front porch, and that's when we seen the flames and the smoke at the end of our street, and we honestly thought that a row of houses were on fire, and the business at the end of our street, we thought it was on fire. It was absolutely terrifying to see it all unfold. Yeah, at that moment, you don't know what's taking place. You don't know if it's a terrorist attack.
You mentioned a bit of like the uncertainty, right? You don't know if it's a terrorist attack. You don't know if it's just it happened on its own. I guess how quickly, like, was it the night of when you realized exactly what it was? Did you leave that night? I guess what were the next steps that you took?
When my husband and we seen the flames and the fire at the end of our street, he actually got in his truck to take off to see if there was anything that he could do, because we honestly thought that there were homes on fire. So that was terrifying, knowing that my husband was trying to go help, and at the same time I was running to get my son, who's almost 21. He was downstairs in his room listening to music, and he actually fell asleep with his earbuds in, so he did not hear the sounds that I did, and I'm very thankful that he was listening to music and he fell asleep that night, so he's not traumatized like I am and have that memory. So I got Austin, and I said, you need to get up. I think we might have to evacuate. I don't know what's going on. And he thought I was pulling a prank on him.
Right.
He didn't believe me until he came upstairs and walked out onto our front porch and seen the flames, and then he was like, what the hell is going on, Mom? And I'm like, I have no idea. And that was totally helpless, because you don't, in that moment, you just know that we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. Sirens were going off. Trucks were speeding down my street because we're on East Clark Street. The fire station is right at the end of our street. And at that time, my husband came home and said, there's nothing that, we could do. He's like, just stay in the house. And I was worried about our neighbor. So I ran over to her house and was pounding on her door to get her attention, and she did not know what was happening. I was really worried for her because she walks with a cane. And while I was there at her house, that's when I believe it was a volunteer was coming up onto porches and telling everyone to evacuate. And then she replied, I have nowhere to go. It's just, there's so many people in town that live paycheck to paycheck and they cannot afford to just pick up and leave.
Right.
And so many people that I know sheltered in place that weekend
Mm-hmm.
because everyone's story is different.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many stories. There's so many stories.
Yeah.
And it's not just a one size fits all.
Mm-mm.
No. And we were told, as the weekend progressed, we were told that if you couldn't leave, to shelter in place.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people did.
Yeah, and I mean, I spoke with her the last time I was here a couple weeks ago, and actually just followed up with her today, a resident who was in that same boat. She just moved into her apartment 2 days before. Didn't have the money to even go get a hotel for the night or the next night or something like that. And, sheltered in place. She was told she was going to be fine as long as she didn't go out onto the streets.
Yeah.
And then, 2.5, 3 days later, when they were getting ready to do the controlled burn, they came and knocked on her door and told her, like, you got to get out of town
leave.
now. And at that point, she was having breathing issues. She was diagnosed with the type of bronchitis from this.
Yes.
And that was because she was one of the folks in that situation who sheltered
where
in
she
place.
sheltered in place.
Yeah.
I know. I sent my son out on Friday night after we were told to evacuate. I sent him out in his car to go to his aunt and uncle's house on North Pleasant Drive, which is like on the outside of town.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely terrifying knowing that you're sending your only child onto the street when fire trucks and everything was going off around us. And I honestly didn't know if I was going to see him again.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't imagine the experience of being right there when this is.
You have to make that choice, whether you stay in your house or do you send him away.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband and I, we were trying to make the decision, what we were doing. And my husband said that he was staying with our 2 dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I need to go. I need to follow Austin. I need to go follow him and make sure that he's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we made that choice where he would stay at home with our 2 dogs because we didn't want to leave them behind.
Mm-hmm.
And about 15 minutes after I sent Austin out to go to his aunt's house, I left. And what I encountered was I couldn't get down the street. The streets were getting blocked off. There was fire trucks and people rushing to the scene, and I couldn't get turned around. And you're just in complete panic mode. You're in survival mode. And I do not remember turning my car around. I think I might have turned around in someone's yard. I think I was on East North Avenue. I know that there was so much traffic, and I honestly do not know how I got my car turned around to go in the opposite direction that night.
No, that's terrible that you had to go through this. I mean, so after the initial derailment happens, you had a period of time where they made the decision to do the controlled burn in air quotes here because nothing about that looked controlled to me.
Nothing was controlled.
Yeah.
That name was made up in a boardroom somewhere
Mm-hmm.
far away from here.
Yes.
Nothing about that burn was controlled.
Yeah.
And
I guess at that point, you are obviously very clearly in the 1 mile forced evacuation for that. Did Norfolk Southern at that point at least pay for relocation type stuff for you all, or was that a whole process that you had to fight to get that stuff, or how did that all go?
I've yet to go
Okay.
to the Norfolk Southern Assistance Center.
Mm-hmm.
That Sunday morning, I'm going to back up
Mm-hmm.
because we landed at my sister's home on Friday night when we were told to evacuate. So myself and my son, my sister and brother-in-law, we were at their home, and we were there for about an hour, and we had a knock on their door telling us to evacuate, that she was in the zone too.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided as a family to shelter in place there.
Mm-hmm.
So from Friday night until Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon, that's where I was
Mm-hmm.
with my family, my sister, brother-in-law, and my son. We sheltered in place there until I seen the press release that came through from our city council that stated that they were fighting the fires and that the EPA was testing our air and the air was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I decided, well, the air is fine. I'm going to go home and I'm going to try to convince my husband to leave with our 2 dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I went home, which is literally less than 5 minutes from my sister's home. And no one stopped me.
Right.
No one stopped me from coming back onto East Clark Street to my house. I thought I might encounter, a police officer or someone to tell me to turn around and go back. No one stopped me from going back to my own home. At that point, when I walked into my house to see my husband, I just wanted to be with him and try to convince him to leave.
Mm-hmm.
What I encountered in my own home, you could smell the fumes outside. You could smell the fumes inside. I knew that we shouldn't be there. Yeah. No one should have been in their homes. We all should have been evacuated and told we need to evacuate or get us out as soon as that train derailed.
Mm-hmm.
Town should have been evacuated, and not just a 1 mile zone or a 2 mile zone. It should have been a 10-mile radius, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Finding out later on Sunday morning when we had a knock on our door, the sheriff was going around doing a head count of who was still in the zone. And then being told that one of the tankers could possibly have a catastrophic failure and that it could blow at any minute. And knowing that that could have happened
Right.
from the moment the train derailed on Friday night, knowing that we were risking our lives basically 36 hours later, and then being told that there could be a catastrophic failure and it could blow. And if it were to blow, it would wipe our town basically off the map. And no one came to help us. No one. I am furious that we were failed repeatedly. I am furious.
Yeah, I mean, again, the fact that if they're going door to door, I mean, there's number one, you should have been telling people to get out sooner if you at that point know that you've got cars that are leaking and potentially at the point of they're going to explode and send shrapnel.
That could have happened any moment.
Right. That's outrageous that wasn't
That's
spread out ahead of time.
That's criminal.
Yeah.
It is criminal what we endured that weekend. It's criminal what we're still enduring.
Mm-hmm.
I do not understand why we have been failed repeatedly. And it's like a freaking fuse was lit that night. And it's just grown and it snowballs. And no one is helping us. People are sick. Today, I know I'm feeling it. I feel it in my throat. I almost feel like my throat is tightening up. The first 2 days when I came back to my home, I was experiencing the rash on my chin and my cheek. I'm just going to openly admit that I am suffering forms of PTSD. I began counseling today for that. All I can say is we're in a living hell and no one is helping us. My family has yet to go to the Norfolk Southern Assistance Center. We have a pile of bills from our evacuation, our initial evacuation when we finally did leave before the catastrophic failure and their controlled burn. There's a pile of bills and receipts at my house, and I've yet to go there because I feel like families are being forced to go there and beg for money, for help, when it's not our fault. And families are sick, and children are sick.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many friends that their children have been to the doctor's office repeatedly for rashes and coughs. The headaches that you get that weekend. Friday into Saturday, I had the worst headache of my life. I think I ended up taking something like 4 or 6 Tylenol before Sunday afternoon. That headache was excruciating. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, and frankly, to your point that you brought up too about like families seeming to have to like fight tooth and nail to get their money from Norfolk Southern. I mean, I've talked to dozens of families at this point who, some of them I talked to them while they were standing in line, spending half their day trying to get something from Norfolk Southern and not coming back with anything in some cases.
And that's the thing. This is not our fault.
Right.
This could have been prevented.
Mm-hmm.
And families need help.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already lost so much of our lives due to this disaster. And then being forced to go and stand in line your entire day. If you have a day off from work, you're being forced to go out there and wait to get some kind of reimbursement. It's infuriating. I just don't understand. I just don't understand. And then to be denied.
Mm-hmm.
If you need help or you do not feel safe in your home or that your family is getting sick.
Yeah. And right now there's all sorts of arbitrary lines being drawn of, oh, if you live in the 1 mile zone, you get this. And now it's if you live within the city limits, which is not a radial design. Like this, the city limits shouldn't matter at all. It should matter the proximity to the actual disaster where it happened, but you also need to take into account where the wind is blowing.
Where the wind.
Yeah. I mean, we were just in Pennsylvania hearing concerns from residents over there, and like in a lot of cases, Norfolk Southern's not given any money to a lot of those folks, and there's parts of Pennsylvania that are closer to this than parts of Ohio are, where folks are able to get some assistance. It's all over the place, and the fact that folks are having to fight to get any of these resources is insane.
I have I have family right across the PA line, too, the Ohio PA line. My mom and my uncle, and I have another uncle and friends and family that live over there. So I'm invested in what's going on, what's happening in Pennsylvania as well. And they have been failed as well. We're all together in this, and it could have been prevented. And it's absolutely terrifying knowing that these trains are derailing on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And it needs to stop. I'm terrified that another one's going to happen, what happened to our town. That Sunday when we left, before the catastrophic failure, and they said you have to leave, my husband and I landed at the Ramada in Beaver Falls, PA. And that night, when I went to take our dog out to the parking lot, she needed to use the restroom, I encountered 3 of the rail workers. Being naive, I actually stood there in the hallway of the hotel, and I thanked the elderly worker, the older gentleman. I thanked him for coming to help our town, and tell how naive I was. And he looked at me and he said, with a southern accent, "Ma'am, this is my job." He says, "This is what we do. We're going to clean up this mess, and we're going to move on to the next one. There'll be another one tomorrow." And he said it so nonchalantly and uncaring, and like it didn't matter, and that it's going to happen again. It absolutely terrified me. I went back to my hotel room, and I sat on the floor and I cried. I just cried, knowing that what we were experiencing, the last 2.5 days of my life, that it's going to happen to someone else. And it has to stop. Something has to give. It has to stop. And I'm coming forward today because I want it to stop. We can't keep living like this in our country and the world. These are people's lives at stake, and we matter. Our families matter. And it just breaks me. It just breaks me knowing that everything that we've lived through for the last month and a half, and that could happen. It could happen tonight. It could happen anywhere.
Yeah.
And just feeling that no one is coming to help us.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's it's hard to even put into words, like, what do you even do to fix what has gone on here. This is and not even to mention, railroad tracks run through small towns across the United States. This happened here this time, but to your point, I mean, this could happen anywhere.
Could happen in a big city, anywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up, that these workers were here to come clean up, and he very nonchalantly said, it's your mess today, it'll be another mess tomorrow. I mean, that's
and you could
tough.
tell,
Yeah.
and you could tell
Mm-hmm.
these workers were not wearing any kind of protective gear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They were covered head to toe, black
Right.
soot, black
Right. Who
smoke.
knows it's not even on. I mean, it's not even necessarily on them. It's on the company that's employing them and the company that's allowing there to be that many messes. These guys are probably out there getting. Who knows what sort of health conditions being out there at derailments like this? Who knows the stuff that they've seen be covered up? Even here, right now they're burying all the. They're digging up the contaminants that were just quickly buried under the tracks before. I mean, ugh.
And that's something that I witnessed on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. Instead of controlling the contamination that was getting into our waterways, we watched them bring in new sections of rail and stack them in front of our home. So their priority was getting the new sections of rail and stacking those and getting those into place instead of preventing those contamination and the chemicals from getting into the water or trying to prevent that and damming it up somehow.
Mm-hmm. Right, and now we clearly have seen, I mean, the last time I was here, we drove a couple miles down Leslie Run after, obviously the near the tracks is Sulfur Run. The chemicals have been found all throughout Sulfur Run, and then that feeds into Leslie Run. We found it for miles down Leslie Run the last time we were here. Residents I've talked to are still finding it for miles. While we're here this week, we're going to look and see. And it sounds like that wasn't a... Right,
down into Beaver Creek now.
Yeah,
and
into
even
the Ohio River. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And the fact that before any of that was messed with, that they had rail tracks in your backyard getting ready to replace them
You
basically
mentioned my
immediately.
front yard and my neighbor directly across the street from us,
Yeah.
his backyard
Yeah.
along the rail line. I have photos.
Yeah.
And fish were dying, wildlife was dying, and no one cared. All they cared about was getting those trains moving down the tracks. That's all they cared about. And that's the way I still feel. That's all they care about. My shop has been closed this entire time because I'm dealing emotionally and physically the trauma and trying to overcome that. And I stayed away as long as I financially could, physically and financially could. My husband had to return to work. But I have people here at the shop that depend on me too, and this is their livelihood as well. I've been trying to slowly reopen and get a few hours a week. But what I'm experiencing here is you end up reliving it every day because people want to talk about it. And everyone has their own opinions and everyone has their own stories. All I know is my story and what I've lived through. And I don't want it to happen to another person or another family.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's also tough. You can basically see the train tracks out the front window here, or right on the main drag here through East Palestine.
You hear them.
Yeah.
You hear them daily. All day long.
Yep.
All day long.
Yeah. And I guess as far as the small business side of this has got to be very tough to manage, and the fact that there hasn't been some sort of program of any kind that I'm at least aware of set up to be able to help business owners. I mean, being closed, obviously, even just for the immediate time frame, there should have been some sort of assistance provided. Again, it's not your fault; it's Norfolk Southern's fault. But in this time frame afterwards, where your business is obviously very clearly impacted, so is everybody else's businesses in these areas. And we're talking, this is a great little shop you have, but it's a small business. You know what I mean? This being closed for a long period of time like this and having less folks in town is obviously going to directly impact you.
All I can say is what I experienced with COVID in the state of Ohio with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Governor DeWine shut down the entire state
Mm-hmm.
for COVID. My business was only open for about 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Bad timing,
Mm-hmm.
taking over a small business. We were open for roughly 3 months, and then COVID hit, and we were deemed non-essential,
Mm-hmm.
so we had to be closed. This is what I do not understand. Governor DeWine closed the entire state for COVID, and this is a chemical disaster of epic proportions.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no help.
Right, and he won't even declare a state of emergency,
No.
which is outrageous. He also waited a very long time to ask for the FEMA assistance, which was,
And it's infuriating.
yeah. I mean, the state level officials here, especially Governor DeWine, have really done a poor job in a variety of ways. In many ways, communication has been all over the place. I mean, we've got countless interviews with him where in one day, he talks about how it's safe and it's fine for people to go back, and he's doing a photo op taking a sip of the water, and then 2 days later he'll be in a press conference and he'll say it's going to take a long time to make the community safe. But I'm sorry, when you're the governor of a state the size of Ohio or any state, your words matter. You need to be clear with everything that you're saying and doing.
And consistency.
Yes.
Consistency. And that's with everyone. I don't care if it's our local council.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to be consistent because we have flip-flopped so many times,
Mm-hmm.
back and forth. That's what has destroyed trust. I do not trust anyone. I do not trust anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Start proving to me that I can trust you.
Right. And
And
you're not the only one saying that either, and frankly, I've said this to a couple people now, the more you dig into everything happening here, and then I start to say it out loud and explain it to people, you start to sound like a conspiracy theorist because it sounds that crazy. You wouldn't think that all of these agencies, all of these people would drop the ball as much as they are. It's easy to prove that a lot of this stuff has been handled in the incorrect way, in an irresponsible way, whether it be the contractors who are hired to come in to do testing, whether it be Norfolk Southern being able to just bury contaminants under the tracks immediately when this happened,
Yes.
the decision to have the quote-unquote controlled burn, not letting folks know that this was going to be able to explode right away.
one tanker
Yeah.
ended up being 5.
Right. That's a huge difference.
We were told that morning, the sheriff told us that morning that there was one tanker that they were concerned about. We were never told 5.
Mm-hmm.
We were never told 5.
Yeah. Yep. No, I mean, it's the amount of inconsistencies, the amount of reliance on Norfolk Southern, the company that caused all of the problems here, to provide solutions was outrageous. It's thing after thing.
Who's holding them accountable?
Right. Right now, I mean, sure, they're being told that they're going to need to pay back a lot of the cost for the testing and stuff that's being done, but they need to be doing a whole lot more. We haven't even mentioned property values and things like this.
No.
You live close by. Tons of people, anyone in town lives close enough by that their property values are dropping like a rock. If you're looking to buy a new home, who's looking to buy a new home in East Palestine right now?
No.
That's a massive financial detriment to everybody who lives here. There's been zero conversation about having Norfolk Southern
And
make that difference up.
And people live paycheck to paycheck
Mm-hmm.
in our town. That's the way the entire United States is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But people live paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And we're one of the lucky ones where our home was paid for.
Mm-hmm.
We've been in our home since 1994.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to openly tell you guys that my parents were in a horrible car accident years ago, and that's how I lost my dad. And the money that I received after my dad passed away, it was basically my inheritance from that horrible accident, is how I paid off my house. So if I lose that house, it's like losing my dad again. And they've destroyed that last gift that I had from my dad. they've destroyed that for me. And just feeling safe in my own home. And that gift, that very last gift that my dad gave me when he passed away. I hate them for taking that from me.
I'm sorry. That's outrageous. And I mean, again, the fact that there's been zero conversation about trying to, obviously, especially in your case, you're never going to be able to like fully replace it,
No.
but there's not even any conversation of trying to help alleviate that.
No.
And
people don't want to be in these homes.
Right.
They're getting sick.
And they were getting sick, and they're still getting sick.
They're
and
still getting sick.
Some of these homes still, the smells are not as prevalent around town everywhere, but they are still existing when you're in different areas. When they're digging up some of this stuff in the areas, I'm sure over there it probably is smelling quite a bit still. Go ahead.
We have snow today.
Right.
It's cold outside, freezing temperatures, and I know that's saving us right now. Those days that we had where it was raining and foggy, it covers, it blankets the entire town. It doesn't matter if you're in the 1 mile zone or if you're 3 miles away. You can smell it. You can smell it into Pennsylvania across the PA line.
Right. People are still getting sick, and for good reason. And again, they're digging up a lot of this stuff right now. The dust is getting up into the air. It's wind blows. It's not like this stuff is contained in some little bubble. It's
little
not.
Imaginary bubble that they've created.
Right. Yeah.
No.
It's
And
outrageous.
I don't know what kind of answers. I don't know. I don't know what our future is going to hold. I'm terrified for that. I know I do not sleep at night hearing the trains because I'm constantly anticipating the next one to sound like it did on Friday, February 3rd. I'm constantly waiting for the next one to sound like that. I don't know. And to take away that sense of security that you have in your own home, how are you ever supposed to feel normal again anywhere?
Right.
I don't know. I know a lot of people were upset because businesses were reopening in town and people were pushing to try to get back to normal. I have a very hard time being here at my own shop, and this was my home away from home. This was my dream of having my own small business. And I find it very difficult to be here when I know so many people are suffering, including my own family. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And I hate that too, because they've destroyed this too. I don't know, guys.
It's, again, I can't even imagine what you're going through with all of this. And again, it's not just your home, it's your business, it's your family's homes, it's your friends' homes.
This is my world. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, right across the state line. But East Palestine was my home. This is the town that we always shopped in, every Friday and Saturday. And growing up in the 80s, 80s and 90s, this was an awesome, beautiful town. And this is where I raised my family, where I raised my son. And our little town had so much potential before this happened. And now I just feel like they've just scarred us for our lifetimes and beyond. And for our children's lifetimes. I don't know how a town can come back from this. I know they're trying to. But I don't know how you look forward when you can't even address the problems that are taking place right now. How do you even try to look beyond tomorrow when you need to take care of today first and address these children that are getting sick and the families that are being torn apart? We need help. We need help.
Well, Lonnie, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us.
Thank you guys for wanting to listen.
Yeah.